This is Baldwin Township, a small slice of Sherburne County, about an hour's drive north of Minneapolis. It's home to over 6,500 people. Everyone from ice fishing champions to Tea Party patriots.
In Jesus' name, amen.
To a striking number of decorative mailbox enthusiasts. Not long ago, though, the place was populated almost entirely by family farms, vacation cabins, and seemingly endless rows of evergreen trees.
When we had our house built, it was a long ways between houses.
There were horses roaming around.
From Zimmerman out here, it was all sunflower fields.
I could literally shoot deer out off the patio deck in my backyard because there was no houses and it was acres and acres of field.
Then, in the early 1990s, this tiny region experienced some pretty big changes. Finding it harder and harder to turn a profit, farmers sold off their land. Developers snapped it up. Soon, instead of corn and potatoes popping out of the sandy soil, there were houses, and lots of them.
Big. It's grown up big.
200 houses went up.
And then, pretty soon more.
There's like 10 times more than there was when I moved here.
Well, it went up pretty fast. It was faster than I thought.
In no time, Baldwin became one of the quickest growing communities in the state. Within 2 decades, its population had nearly doubled.
When we first moved here, I think there was only 2 other houses that were built. And I really felt like I was in the country. Then all of a sudden you start seeing the other houses pop up. And you're like, oh, they're moving in on us. Oh, it's getting smaller, it's getting smaller. Then I started thinking, well, I just kind of did that to all the other people who were living up here.
The majority of Baldwin's new residents came from the Twin Cities and the surrounding suburbs. Many continue to work in the metro, and they make the 100-mile round-trip commute every weekday. They say the hours spent in the car are nothing compared to the dollars saved on real estate. With housing costs in Baldwin significantly lower than those in Minneapolis or St. Paul, people were able to buy much nicer homes on much larger plots of land.
It does come back to my wife, and the whole reason was
I grew up on Lake Minnetonka, and I had always said we need to live on a lake, and my husband said, yeah, in your dreams, we can't afford anything.
And I always thought it was kind of a pie-in-the-sky dream, but all of a sudden we did find a listing here, and we came out and we looked at it, and it all of a sudden went very fast, and we moved out here a few months later after that.
That Baldwin had the lowest taxes around only sweetened the deal.
One of the biggest things that sold me on Baldwin is what sells a lot of people on Baldwin, and that's the tax difference. There is a tremendous difference not only between living in a city or a township on taxes, but there's also a tremendous difference between living where we have the borderline there between Sherburne County and Mille Lacs. And Sherburne County and Mille Lacs, there's a tremendous difference in the tax rate there.
Of course, as plenty point out, the benefits of Baldwin go far beyond the financial.
There's more tranquility up here, a lot more just beauty. The wildlife, the eagles, and we have fox in our backyard. We have, you don't get that down there. And if you do, it's usually on the roadkill on the highway or, something like that. No.
Have you yet looked up at the stars when you're sitting here with no lights, looking around you? Everything looks just cleaner, fresher. You can sit there and actually listen to yourself think.
It's God's country. It truly is.
For many, life in God's country requires frequent pilgrimages to Ridgewood Bay, the local bar. Residents rave about the all-you-can-eat buffets, and missing the Saturday afternoon meat raffle is almost sacrilege. Here, third-generation townsfolk mix with recent transplants. Hobby farmers and insurance agents enjoy pitchers of Michelob alongside nurses and construction workers. They all seem to have one thing in common, a strong dislike for urban living.
I'm a St. Paul girl. Happier and heck to be out of there for 30-plus years.
It's not as busy and crazy, and it's more quiet and subdued, and I like that.
In my neighborhood, if I hear a gunshot, somebody shot a wild animal. In the cities, somebody shot somebody else. That's just crazy. Who wants to live there?
I think people are a lot nicer up here, whereas in the cities, I don't know if you want to say stuck up or snobby or whatever, but it's like in the cities, people got their own clique of people or niche of people that they hang out with, and if you didn't fit into that group of people, it was just like you were an outsider trying to come in, and it's like, well, no, go find your own group of people to hang out with. But up here, friends are abundant.
That friendliness was on full display at this year's Snowmobile Radar Run. On a wintry weekend in January, hundreds gathered on Little Elk Lake, to see who could cross the frozen water in the fastest time.
89 miles an hour on that last run, 89 miles an hour.
Exact speeds were determined by a radar gun on loan from the sheriff's department.
I've had a few people question the validity of our radar gun today, and I can verify that our radar gun is accurate.
To hear residents tell it, there's nothing better than grilling up pork products in sub-zero temperatures while watching your neighbors blast themselves across the ice. It's this supportive, spirited, small-town way of life some fear could be lost if Baldwin experiences another growth spurt.
Not too long ago, this was a small little community, and now there's 6,500 people here. And if we're not real careful, we're going to be a whole bunch of people that moved out here into the rural area, bringing the city with us.
It's a catch-22 situation. People want their land. They don't want people to move up here, but to sustain the money it costs to have roads and everything else, the infrastructure, you know, we're going to need that revenue somewhere, and the growth has provided us enough revenue to keep this township in a good position right now.
Still, many residents worry that more people will eventually mean more taxes, more regulation, more hassle, the very things they moved here to get away from.
I just wanted somewhere where there was no rules or anything like that, and you could do what you want to do. If you want to build a pole barn, you can build a pole barn. Certain areas we were looking at where if we wanted a little nicer living, you had to have your house red, and you couldn't have laundry out. Couldn't have an RV parked in your yard for longer than a certain amount of time.
I remember when we first moved here and it's like, oh wow, we can have a bonfire. We don't have to have an ordinance or anything.
You feel a little more freer. You know, in the wintertime, we can hook up the kids to on a sled in the back of this snowmobile or four-wheeler and bring them down the road, or, you know, not having to worry about, you know, the lady next door calling the cops on you, or, you know, so that aspect, it's fun.
122 miles an hour, that's 122.
I think the thing for Baldwin is an identity of freedom. For some people, it's freedom not to have to pay the higher taxes. For some people, it's the freedom to go to their yearly meeting and say what they want in their budget. For some people, it's the freedom to do things with their land that they would not be able to do inside the city. That is really Baldwin's chief identity.
Residents are certainly passionate about the Baldwin lifestyle, but when it comes to Baldwin itself, they're pretty indifferent.
Baldwin as a community, I don't think that really exists.
For many, Baldwin is merely a name on a map, which can be frustrating for the township's board of supervisors. It's not easy to manage a place where less than 10% of the population votes in local elections. When it comes to fostering community, it probably doesn't help that Baldwin has no grocery store, no public library, and no school system. For those things, and many others, people turn to the neighboring towns of Zimmerman and Princeton. Princeton's population is actually smaller than Baldwin's, but unlike Baldwin, Princeton possesses the cornerstone of small-town cohesiveness, a main street. It's here people come together, be it in a corner of the cafe or the lobby of the pet salon. The layout of Baldwin Township, with its scattering of subdivisions, simply doesn't allow for such impromptu interaction. But in a place celebrated for its elbow room, not too many people are complaining.
No, that doesn't, I don't wake up at nights worried about that at all.
When it comes down to it, residents here don't rely on their town for community. In fact, their notion of kinship has always reached beyond the boundaries of Baldwin. For a number of the township's citizens, connection is found here at Trinity Lutheran Church in Princeton.
Community is where you find it. It's through the schools, it's through the churches, it's through the community service organizations, it's through your kids' sports. That's where people get their community.
Lord, in your mercy.
As far as these congregants are concerned, community has little to do with where your house stands or who mails out your yearly tax statement. Plus, truth be told, many would choose even a sermon of fire and brimstone over a town hall meeting.
City politics, especially in small towns, can get incredibly contentious. Everyone is so close in a small town, everybody knows everybody. You know, you can get to the point where it's like, oh, well, so-and-so is running this, so there's nothing we can do. And we get a little bit of that. So-and-so has known somebody for 100 years, and they already have formed their opinion, and it just is one of those kind of quirky things.
We've been to a few township meetings, but we usually find out what happens at them anyway, just through word of mouth of everybody in the small community.
For the most part, I don't really get into that.
If there's some issues going on in Baldwin that really drew people's passions and interest, people would be there. But you know, if they're just managing, putting in this road or that road, and that's their function, I mean, that's not all that interesting.
I check on the website once in a while, but other than that, I pretty much just do my thing and live my life.
You might say that desire, the desire to simply live one's life, is ultimately what drives everyone in Baldwin Township. The hitch, of course, is that living life means different things to different people. For some, it's being able to work in Minneapolis, yet reside in a place that permits pontoon boats in the front yard. For others, it's having the freedom to hit the trails morning and night, yet not having to hear the neighbors revving up their four-wheelers at some ungodly hour. So far, Baldwin's done a pretty good job of accommodating them all. But out on the horizon, questions are stirring. How should officials address strained infrastructure in a region where people prize low taxes? What's the long-term impact of the economic downturn on a place with a nearly non-existent business sector? At what point does a small town get too big? And just how can you increase civic engagement in a place teeming with free spirits? Up until now, Baldwin Township has been able to sidestep such sticky issues. But in the future, maintaining the perfect balance between cul-de-sac and countryside might not be so easy.